How you doing, guys? It's me again. I'm out here fabbing on these trusses. I think I'm gonna sell these on Rusty 412. I'm gonna keep fitting on it until it fits perfectly, and cut a bunch out on plasma cutter. This is a 3/8 plate. It'll go on the long side. It'll go up against the mount for the upper control arm, come over, go up on the axle tube there, and then go around the housing. I've had it for a while, just haven't put it on, but I had an idea, not an idea, I had a guy ask me about something, and I have never told you guys how, about treading deep water with your Jeep like I do, and how do I get the alternator to live, and basically the Jeep to live through that deep water. And I don't think I've ever said anything on it, how I do it. The key to it is, with the deep water, is going first, believe it or not. And if it's in the trails and it's clean water is different than muddy, mucky ass, silty water. If y'all notice out there in the trails where we ride, the water's black. It's got acidic stuff in it from the trees. I forget the name of it, but it turns the water black. So the water here in Florida, the black water, and in South Georgia, it'll actually cause electrolysis on the bolts and stuff, and it cleans it. Like, y'all see me in the mud, and then you'll see me blasting through the water holes and just washing. And I do that when I come back. Before I come back, usually I got a road out there I pick, and I'll go down through all that deep water and just wash all the shit out from under it. But the best thing to do when crossing deep water crossings like that is try to be first, for one thing. And if you don't know how deep it is, wade it. If you do enough of deep water crossings, you'll know about how much you can take, height wise. I'm comfortable up to the top of my winch. I'm still comfortable with it up to about right there, pushing water. But when I start seeing it boil up, you'll be able, if you look down the line of your hood, you'll see the water level. Let me see if you can see my hand. You'll see the water level before it gets too deep. You'll see it start bulging up higher than the hood in front of you. And when you start seeing that, the best thing to do is just back on out if you haven't waded it. And like I said in my basic tips video, you don't want to haul ass through there. You want to push the water ahead of you. I think the Florida Jeep Trails video, you can see the wave where I said I'm going to make a wave. You can see when you get that water pushing, you could push 2 or 3 feet high water in front of you and be in the shallow water behind you. But if you can't go too slow and you can't go too fast. It's like an arc. It's like once you get that water pushing, you can go on through there and push it. But you really need to know how deep it is. So if it's something you got to cross, or here's a good rule of thumb too that I do with deep water. If I got a buddy of mine that's with me and he's got a bigger Jeep than mine, say, these assholes that ride me, he's got 44s and 40s, and we're going to join them with that, by the way. We're going to put the 40s on here, but, anyway, they got 44s. Go up to their Jeep, and your water level line, and check it on their tires, right? So then if you're behind them, all you got to do is... Yeah, hold on. Oh. Anywho, that was my daughter. Anyway, if your buddies have bigger tires, most of you guys know to do that. I mean, but some of you guys that just started playing in the woods and the mud and water and all, you can use your people ahead of you's Jeep for a gauge of see if you can do it or not. By if their tires go under, if it's halfway of their tire, You can also watch them to see if they slide over into a hole on that side, if you need to go this way or whatever. You got to use everything around you to get through that shit like that. But as far as the, he was asking me how I keep the alternators. I put 2 or 3 on here in the last 2.5 years. But the one that's on here now, I tried something new, and I never said anything to you guys because I didn't want y'all to try it and burn your Jeep up. But it can be done. I do it this way. Y'all have noticed in my videos how my belt goes a squealing when I get into the water, right? When I come up out of it, you'll hear it squealing, and it'll catch and everything's turning. What I do is I run my belt on my Jeep very, very close to being too loose. I will put the belt on there and start turning the tensioner, and I will crank it up without the AC on. And then I will let it run, turn the AC on, and I'll keep loosening it up till when I turn the AC on, the belt squeaks, right? And then I'll shut it off, I'll give it a half a turn, I'll turn it back on, and I'll cut the AC on until it doesn't squeak, and then I stop. That's as tight as I run it. Now you got a certain deflection you're supposed to run in your belt, and it's pretty much dead nuts on to what it should be. So when I get in the water, when I get in a water hole, my belt actually stops turning everything when I get in deep water, which saves the clutch on the clutch fan, and it saves the alternator. Now, I haven't ever showed y'all this either. I'm going to show you my water pump pulley. Now, the belt will turn a little bit. Hopefully you can see down in there. I can't see my viewfinder, it's kind of dark out here. You see the lines I put in my water pump? I did that so it'll make it easier to turn on the belt. When everything else was wanting to slip, it helps that turn while the belt's slipping. It's not turning as fast as it should be, and it's not turning properly. But you're only going to be in the water for a split, a minute or less usually. Now, if you get stuck, you're going to have issues with your belt slipping. I mean, it's a crapshoot, I usually know I can make it through stuff before I go off in it if it's deep water. I've either been through it before, or if it's something brand new, I'll weight it and I'll see just how deep it is, and I can feel if it's a hard bottom, soft bottom. If you're sinking up to your damn knees in mud, then you don't want to try it. But most of them in Florida, the deep ones, you can walk out in them and it's a sand bottom. I mean, it's not mud, it's sand bottom. You just wade in water basically. So getting through the water is as bad or worse than getting through the mud. But if you think you're going to get stuck in it, you don't go in it at all, because you're going to fill everything up with water. And I said that in my trail riding video where I was with the Jeep Freaks, and I was in that canal and I was saying everything's going to be full of water. Jennifer thought I was talking about inside the Jeep. I was talking about the transmission, the diffs, all that shit. Because if you sit there in it, it will get in there. But if you're driving and you're turning the tires and you're going, it has less of a time to get in there. But if it just sits there and soaks, it's getting in there. But it's all the belt thing is something I do. I don't recommend you do it, but you can play around with it if you know what you're doing. If you know what to look for, you're gonna watch your temperature. You're gonna make sure it's right on the trails, because if you get it too loose, your water pump's gonna slip when it gets under pressure. Because it's hard to turn that water pump with pressure in the cooling system. Like 6, 8, 10 pounds of pressure. It actually gets a little hard to turn that. I mean, it's a trick that I do. It helps my Jeep survive that shit. The clutch don't go out, the alternators don't go out as bad, because it's not turning when it gets in that water. It's just sitting there. So when it comes out, the water drains out of it and the belt dries out, it starts turning again. It's just a trick that I do. But you don't really run these belts real tight anyway. If you run it just where it's not squeaking, yours will do it too. It'll start slipping when it gets wet. You'll think you lost your steering or the belt or whatever, but it'll just be slipping. And then all the shit don't turn while it's underwater. That's why your starter will last a little bit longer than the alternator, because the alternator is turning underwater. The best thing to do is don't take it in stuff like that, especially if it's muddy, mucky water. If it's clean water and you're the first one going through it, it's different. Also, what I do is all my plug wires are siliconed on. I would take it off, but they won't come off. So the only thing though, when you do that, when you do a tune-up, you got to replace all the wires and all that shit, but you need to do that anyway. But all these are siliconed on. I put silicone inside the 90 and just smash it down on there. Same thing with the plug wires and the coil wire. And all my connectors, like all the connectors on the computer, I've showed y'all this in other videos, but dielectric grease in the plug and smash it in there, smash it in there, smash it in there. Dielectric grease is a non-drying silicone that will seal, but it won't never harden, and you can pull it back and forth. It works good on the plug wires too. You can put dielectric on there to seal them up too, but the heat melts it away. On something like this, it won't melt it away, you know. But these things do handle water good, but you need to make sure all your vent tubes come up to where they're at and they're all sealed. There's no leaks in them, none of that stuff, because if you don't, you're gonna get water in your transmission and you'll be tearing down an AW4 to make a video on a rebuild, and it'll be rusted to crap and you won't be able to fix it like I did. But the only thing that I go through from deep water used to be alternators until, matter of fact, y'all probably heard me say it in that video when I was in that canal. Well, this will be another alternator, because I heard a noise under there, zzz, whizzing, and it had jammed a stick up into my flywheel and it was rubbing on the flywheel. That's another thing. Make sure you have your dust cover on your flywheel, because as y'all seen in the trail riding with the Jeep Freaks, when I come out of that hole and I had them weeds around my drive shaft that big around, that shit will get up in there around your flywheel and you talking about a mess. So you need to have your dust cover on. It helps keep the mud out of the starter, because if you don't have it on there, that flywheel turns in a direction that it just packs mud in the alternator. Like if you get a Jeep, if your Jeep, you go out wheeling with it and your alternator goes out, I mean not your alternator, your starter. If your starter goes out, come home, take it apart, clean all the mud out of it and put it back on there to probably work. I made a video on that too, you know, I think it was like a year ago with the starter, because I kept going through starters and I couldn't figure it out. Well, when I swapped out my did my torque converter seal the first time, I forgot to put the dust cover back on there, and I went through a couple starters before I figured it out. But the cup of that starter sticking in there catches that mud from the flywheel and just packs it all the way through the starter, and it'll kill it. It'll quit out there in the woods on you. But that's, your dust cover needs to be on, and your wires need to be siliconed up for your distributor and your plug wires. Anywhere water can get in that engine needs to be sealed up. If you have an engine oil leak, if your rear main seal's leaking, your front's leaking, it's leaking oil anywhere down low, it's going to let water into it. If oil can get out, water can get in. And it's going to be under pressure when you sink your Jeep down in it. The best thing to do is not go in the shit. But they do take water very well. There's some videos on YouTube where, I forget the name of the video, but these kids that took one, they put a camera under the hood and they drove it off in a pond with the hood open, and the engine, they didn't do anything to it, it was stock. If I remember correctly, the water was up to close to here and the engine just ran and ran and ran and ran and ran. They do good in deep water, but you have to protect it to keep yourself from having to buy a bunch of parts. I've shorted my computer out 3 or 4 times, and I've said this in videos, if you short your computer out on the trails, it won't start. It'll say no bus on your miles, where your miles are, it'll say no bus right there usually. If you are driving, you come out of a deep hole in the trails and you see no bus all of a sudden on your mile an hour, where your miles are, don't shut it off. There's some kind of failsafe in the computer that will keep it running unless you really killed it. But if it gets wet in there, there's something in it. it will stay running until you shut it off. If you shut it off, it ain't gonna crank back up. That happened to me in North Carolina in the mountains at Jeep Fest. I got it wet and I decided it was running fine. I shut it off to see what was going on, because it said no bust, it wouldn't crank back up. I had to get it towed to a motel that we were staying at, and I said, well, I'll deal with it in the morning. I got it in the morning, went out there, and Black Betty fixed herself. She cranked right up. And all it was, I figured out when I got back, was the computer got wet. But I was showing off. Y'all know how I am. Them JK guys couldn't believe I'd drive that thing off in deep water like that, but I did. Hell, I had it licking over the hood up there, 1,000 miles from home. But me and Jennifer had went to the U-Haul place and priced a trailer and a U-Haul truck so we could get it back. Because I told her if I go into the trail ride thing, I'm gonna give it hell, no matter. And we drove it up there. Anyway, guys, he had asked me about that deal about the tread in deep water. How do I, how does it survive that? Because he goes through alternators and stuff. The only thing you can do with alternator is try not to turn it underwater, especially fast, and it'll eat the brushes up. So what it does, the mud and the dirt gets between the brushes and the comb, and it just eats the damn brushes right out of it, or it'll break them off. If it breaks them off from some mud or muck, a stick or whatever getting up in there, it's just going to die right then. That's it. But I've had mine underwater at least 30-40 times since I put it on there, and it's done fine. But I also got the belt the proper tension to where when it gets in the water, everything stops turning. It sounds like it's not a good idea, and it's not a good idea if you're not aware of it and you're ready to watch it when you get in deep water like that. It will make it survive the stuff, but you have to know what it's doing. You have to know that none of that stuff's turning, and if it's it's usually a straight shot across them. You ain't got to do a bunch of turning and maneuvering and shit. And here in Florida, they're usually sand bottom when they're bad like that, when they're deep. But always weight it, see how deep it is. If it's clean, clear water, or that dark color water, and there ain't a bunch of muck and silt in it, it'll handle that better than if it does have silt in it. And if it's got the mud in it and then it's all mixed together, all silty, it is a mess. I did that too, and I won't do it again. In that video where I put 44s versus 36s, I took this thing in a clay bounty hole, and it went just as far as the 44s did before I got stuck. But it had that silty clay, the nastiest shit. You guys that live up there where the clay's at, I feel for you. I wouldn't like that too much. That clay's a whole different ball game than mud. That shit ruins stuff. It's so fine of a silt, it gets into everything. It'll get all in the alternator, all in the starter, it gets everywhere. And you can't get the shit off. But anyway, guys, I guess I'll holler at you later. They're still showing that damn hurricane coming this way, so I think I'm going to get out here this evening and put the throttle body back on her and make sure the tires are aired up and check all the fluids and put water in my washer fluid tank and make sure my batteries are charged in the back and everything's working with the inverter in case we have to use her for a survival vehicle. Hopefully it won't. Hopefully the news is wrong. They usually are, but hopefully they are wrong. I guess that's it on that subject. Really, how you get them to survive in deep water is don't go in it. I ain't got good sense, but I'm an explorer. I like to explore. I'm not putting 44s on or 40s on my Jeep to, be able to trek through, a bounty hole somewhere out at some mud pit or some shit like that. That's not what I'm doing it for, and that's not what this Jeep's for. This Jeep is for exploring, and there's swamps that I have to explore. That's all I have is my trails are swamps, and there's trails out there, swampland, swamp roads that I can't go down in this, and that's why we're jacking it up, putting bigger tires on it. It's not to go in a mud pit or something like that. It's to explore. It's not a good idea to go through that shit, but I live 15 miles from the woods, from the trails, and if I get tied out there and mess my Jeep up, I can get it back and work on it. I don't have to drive it every day. And but anyway, like I said, the best way to keep your Jeep surviving in the water is don't go in it. Not the deep stuff. Let somebody else tear their shit up, especially if you love your Jeep like I love my Jeep. I mean, I can fix anything on it, and I've prepared it for that stuff, but it's still, you know, it'll still go down in that deep water. I have drowned it out before, and we got to fix this one of these days. But these snorkels have a flex tube. I still ain't never did anything with it. What happened to me is, you can see that tape on it right here. Stick. The stick come off the tire and knocked a hole in it when I was deep in the water, and it sucked it in. But my paper filter trick shut the engine down. We got it out of there. I took the filter out, cranked up, it was fine. But that's another thing with your snorkel. When you put your adapter on there, you got to silicone all that in too. But it still ain't good for them. You know, how could it be? I'm not telling y'all to do it. I'm just saying, if you want to explore like I do and go where no Jeep has gone before, then you can seal everything up, make sure all your vent tubes are good, drive through it like you got some sense, and you can get through some shit you wouldn't believe these would go through. Guaranteed. Anyway guys, y'all take it easy and we'll holler at you later. I think I'm done now for the weekend. We got some content at the end this weekend, but next weekend, if that storm's coming, we may not have any content. If it starts blowing and raising hell around here, I'll make some video of that, and I'll have my batteries charged on this, and we can get some record of it, and if I have to go out in the Jeep. But maybe the hurricane will fuck off and not come this way. Y'all take it easy, and we'll holler at you later, guys. Alright, bye.